a song. They named it. He wrote a song about that, and they named it Black Sabbath. And Black Sabbath is taken from a Boris Karloff movie about a talking boat that wins a regatta for a group of orphans. Karloff does the voice of the boat, and they ended up having to change their name because some other band was like, "Hey man, we're Earth," and then I'm sure another band was like, "No, we're Earth," and then it just kept going on from there. Either way, Sabbath saw the writing on the wall, so they were like, "Well, our favorite song and the song that everybody likes most is Black Sabbath. Let's just call ourselves that." So their debut album was Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath, featuring the song Black Sabbath. They were one of those.
That's right, and they, I'm going to sort of pepper in some, Rolling Stone, take it for what it's worth, but they have a list of their top 100 metal bands, and fun fact, either Ozzy or Sabbath, or I'm sorry, metal albums, either Ozzy or Sabbath have 4 of the top 15. Not bad.
Not bad at all. No, Ozzy's definitely a metal god, which is interesting because Black Sabbath, as a band, just like Led Zeppelin said, we're not heavy metal, or we weren't heavy metal.
Right.
It's not what we were. And again, most people are like, you are. Sorry to we're definitely metal.
Yeah.
But apparently Rob Halford, the singer of Judas Priest,
yeah.
I guess he was on WTF with Mark Maron at some point, and he said, "Hey, Sabbath has always said like we weren't the first metal band. Well, Judas Priest was founded the same year.
Yeah.
So we'll gladly take that
sure.
title as the first metal band." You can make a pretty good case if Sabbath says no, give it to Judas Priest.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I realized they formed at the same time. That's interesting, and I also think Ozzy's post-Sabbath career is just Ozzy Osbourne was as metal gets, so there may be a little bit of like kind of joining those two things together.
That's possible, for sure. Had he gone like the way of George Benson or Joe Mangione, people might leave. Oh yeah, that's right. Wow,
yeah.
We're just popping off the list. We're doing the opposite.
Yeah, laying down.
So most people though say they'll give Black Sabbath a pass on their debut album. They're like, okay, that was kind of bluesy. It is, but it's still pretty metally. But they're like, your second album, Paranoid, sorry, that is definitely metal. War Pigs is about as metal gets still to this day.
Yeah, I mean, Paranoid is ranked as the #1 metal album of all time. Everyone's there.
Well, then there's no argument.
I agree, and I think we should take a break and maybe come back and talk about the very unfortunate kind of legendary incident that happened to Black Sabbath early in their career. Right into this. So we're back with part 2 of 6 of the heavy metal duology, and I promised a little bit of talk about a famous incident, a very sad one, involving Black Sabbath early in their career, and that is when Tony Iommi, their brilliant left-handed guitar player, was a teenager. He worked at a steel mill in Birmingham, England. He was on his last shift. Apparently he was heading out on tour with the band, and he came home on a lunch break and almost didn't even go back, and his mom said, "Get your butt back there, you got to finish your job, boy." And he went, "Okay, Mom," and he went back and proceeded to lose the ends of his middle finger and ring finger on his right hand, but remember, he's a left-handed guitar player, so if it was the other way around, he could still hold the pick and probably be okay, but this is the hand that is on the neck, so he was missing a large portions of his digits that make that pretty vital.
Yeah, I also read that this was the first time he used a metal press because the guy who normally did it was out, and so they had Tony Iommi cover his shift for the first time ever. Like, last shift ever before he goes out on tour. Like, that's just crazy that happened. But that was actually a gift to metal in a lot of ways because he had to basically adapt. Apparently, Django Reinhardt lost like some fingers or hand or something crazy like that.
It's a fire that basically he only had use of 2 fingers on his fretting hand.
Okay, well, somebody told that story to Tony Iommi, and it inspired him to just get back in there. He made prosthetics himself for his fingers, and apparently they weren't so. So instead, he had to adapt by he loosened the strings by down tuning. So everything had a deeper, like heavier sound to it. The same notes that standard tuning can use. It had a deeper sound. He wasn't necessarily doing it for the deeper sound he was doing it because the looser strings were easier for him to bend with what he had left of his fingers. That was a huge development that came out of the loss of his fingers.
Yeah, for sure. Also, with the lighter strings, he couldn't play as fast, so that's why Black Sabbath has that terrific, just sort of grungy slog, and it's not like the kind of fast metal. It's because Tony Iommi, like you said, he made these things out of wax and leather, and if he played fast enough, they would fly off his finger, and so he had to kind of slow it down, and that's why they had that sort of deep, sludgy grind.
Yeah, one of the other things I love about Sabbath too is they their studio albums contain like mess ups, like blatant mess ups. Like they'll just like miss the beat on drums or something like that once in a while, and they just kept going and released it on the album. I love that about them.
Listen, right before we recorded, I have 180 gram versions of their debut, which has the most terrifying album cover of all time to me.
Oh yeah?
Oh, I think so. And Masters of or Master of Reality, or something. Masters, I can't remember. And then I realized I didn't even have Paranoid, so I ordered Stat.
Yeah, that's something. We'll talk a little more about album art later, but definitely something that's missing in the day and age of like listening to stuff digitally.
Yeah.
You don't have that record or album to like look at while you're listening, and that's like part of the experience, right?
Yeah.
But I will say that I noticed recently I was listening to Somewhere in Time, the Iron Maiden album, and the album art on my iPhone moves now. So Eddie, like, they show him like shooting the guy just out of frame. You just see his hand, his eyes light up. Like, it's really cool. We're downloading the album just to see that alone, let alone for the music. So I'm glad that developed, but it's still not quite the same as holding like a record album like cover and looking at it.
Yeah, for sure. The 70s also included, of course, Judas Priest, as you mentioned. Iron Maiden started in 1975 with a different lead singer. That's if you're not super into Iron Maiden and you just kind of remember the 80s music videos with the great Bruce Dickinson up front. Their first two records, Killers and just, I think it was self-titled, right?
Yeah, Iron Maiden and then Killers, and they were both. It was Paul Di'Anno was their first lead singer.
I like those records.
Let's talk a little bit about Maiden right now. You want to?
Yeah, you want to get into it?
Yeah, because it's really pretty much impossible to overstate the influence that Iron Maiden had on metal. You know?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like if you ask some of the people who make up the big four of thrash bands, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, they're basically like we wouldn't exist if it weren't for Iron Maiden. Like we love Maiden so much we decided to form our own band. We were inspired to form our own band, and it just keeps going down the line. Band after band after band started out loving Iron Maiden. It's such a great entree into heavy metal music because it's so listenable.
Yeah, totally.
It's melodic. The lyrics are really interesting. Like the themes of the songs are really varied. And I was evidence of this. The poster art alone can get you into Iron Maiden. Like I had my room covered in Iron Maiden posters before I listened to them at all.
Yeah, I mean we should talk about that for a second. And their mascot is Eddie. If you've ever seen an Iron Maiden album cover or poster or live video where they have big, giant Eddie walking around and stuff, like a puppet, I guess. He's their mascot, and he was drawn by a guy named Derek Riggs. And originally he was called Eddie the Head, and then just the Ed. But in their British accent, the Ed, they like dropped their H's.
Oh, is that right?
It just became Ed, then Eddie is how they eventually wound up with it.
Very nice. And he's been on every single of the 17 albums that they've released. Most of the singles, apparently not all, I don't know why. But he's usually kind of like altered to represent whatever that particular album is about, right?
Yeah, for sure. He was an inmate in a mental institution for peace of mind. I do love the cover of Power Slave when he's a pharaoh in the desert. Pretty cool.
Apparently, when they toured that album, they had like a 30-foot like actual build of that as the background.
Why would you not?
Just Eddie alone, and he's a good example of why the loss of like an album cover is a big deal because it doesn't get any better than Iron Maiden.
No, agreed. They came out in 1975, and believe it or not, Def Leppard was also debuting along with Motorhead, and they were grouped together as what's called the new wave of British heavy metal. And that was sort of happening concurrently with the punk scene, which is interesting because punk and metal to me are very different, but there are some sort of tendrils that work through both of those kinds of music.
Yeah, and that's where those first two albums they were definitely influenced. Paul Di'Anno was definitely influenced by punk, so it was a lot closer to hardcore than the albums